If you're watching this, it means I have stopped procrastinating, got off the computer and turned around to the other desk. This is not really a review as much as a showcase. I think review is a bit unfair. These are all really high quality products. I wanted to showcase paints made by smaller companies, and I decided to limit that to UK companies because I would run out of money otherwise. So I've picked 5. 2 of them are slightly larger, Jackman's and Wallace Seymour, and 3 of them are, I assume, one-person businesses selling on their own websites or on Etsy. So these are all absolutely high quality, fantastic colours, brilliantly made paints, and they're lovely to work with. There are upsides and downsides to buying from smaller makers. They might not include all of the pigment information all of the time, although I have no reason to think that you can't email them and ask them. Some of them do include the pigment. Some of these paints have got information on them. Some of them sell curated sets, so Little Rainbow Moon, where is the camera at, sells curated sets, but you can also buy single pans. I will include all of the boring details, the prices, website information in the description, and I will also do a Substack with more information there. But let's get on and play with these. I thought it'd be fair to have a crack on some grainier, more textured paper. So this is my lovely Indigo pad from Sketchbook from Artway. And we'll also try them on the smoother Hahnemuhle paper. These are both 100% cotton papers. One of them is cotton rag made in India. And I have no idea where Hahnemuhle make their paper, but that is 100% cotton as well. So let's start with the Wallace Seymour so that I can get it out of the way. Wallace Seymour, I think, have been around since 2011. I think they're both proper grown-up sensible artists, if sensible and artist can be used in the same sentence. I've put this into a pan. It comes in tubes. The colours in these tubes are hand painted onto that label. I found that out by picking it up with a wet hand, so don't do that. Make sure your hands are dry before you handle tubes with hand painted labels. Yes, but I put some into pans for you to use, and I can tell that there is not a huge amount of binder in these because the paint has cracked in the pan, which it doesn't affect how the paint is used. But if you do have paints that dry up like that in the pan and crack, be careful what you do with your tin, because if you drop it on the floor and it goes upside down, it might all fall out of the pan. Just don't be clumsy. So this is nice. This is an ultramarine blue deep, and it's exactly what I would expect from that colour. Loads of pigment. You can see the granulation happening already. I'll bring it closer to the camera. Chuck a bit more water in there. I haven't given this one a lot of time to wet up, so it will be more heavily pigment loaded if I had. Let's see what happens if we dilute it out a lot. Very nice. And I think I bought a primary set from them because it seemed sensible at the time. So yeah, this one has also, and not having lots of binder, it's not a bad thing. It means you are getting more pigment and less binder for your money. You can also use it direct from the tube straight onto the paper. You'll also have fewer issues with the pigment settling out of the binder and getting a load of binder when you open the tube. So I think it's a personal choice with paint makers as to how much they use, and a personal choice with artists as to what they like. I don't mind either way. I can show an example of paint that has a lot more binder in, which again doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of pigment in there, but paints with more binder in, and sometimes with a preservative like honey. And let's mix those together. Or clove oil will potentially not dry hard and might stay a bit sticky in the pan, which isn't a problem as long as you're aware of it, and as long as you don't do what I did earlier and leave a brush lying across your palette tin so that it gets stuck in the paint. It's a bit messy. Just chuck a bit more pigment in there. I'd certainly rather pay the paint maker for the paint rather than lots of extra water. This is Horton Red, so that's their own brand red. This is cadmium yellow. I don't know if this is actually cadmium yellow with actual cadmium in it. Probably be an idea not to lick the brush. Very nice. I'll make some lovely oranges from that. And let's have a look at what that looks like on the textured paper. It does wet up, despite not having a huge amount of binder, this wets up very quickly. This paper is much, much softer and rougher in texture, which means the pigment will move differently. It's very, very nice for abstract landscapes. I quite like painting birds on it, because if you pick the right paint that granulates, you can often get the texture of the paper and the way the pigment settles to suggest a lot of the details for you. And I like that because I'm a lazy, lazy artist. So that's moving very differently to the way it moved on here. You can see the blooms where I dropped water in there, whereas here it's settling out more evenly. It just looks a bit different. Oh, that's very pretty. Let's have a go with that blue. Ooh, another thing to look at would be what happens if you drop paint into a wet page. So we'll do that in a minute. So we can do that now. Let's wet this bit up. That red, whatever pigment is in that red is very staining because it's still on my brush, despite rinsing it several times. Now then. Ooh. This blue is a granulating pigment. It's PB29. So it's quite heavy and it wants to sit into the texture of the paper. And you can see where that little bit of red has just touched. It's trying to get in there and mix. All by itself, let's give it a helping hand. Let's go down the line, get a lovely purple. Very nice. Wallace Seymour don't sell direct to the public. They do sell via several smaller companies. I'm not sure which. I will add that to. I'll add where I bought these tubes from to the description, and I'll have a look when I do the Substack as to where else you can get them from. They have tubes in a couple of sizes, I think, and they also have pans, and they also have curated sets on various different themes. That's a nice purple. It looks muddy when it's a deep puddle, but when you spread it out, it's very nice. Let's go back to the other pad while that dries. So the next larger company is Jackman's, and can I remember how long? 2019 I think they've been making paint, and not entirely sure of the history, but Mark Jackman is a chemist and the founder of the company, and I think it's his father that was an artist, I'm not sure. But he's another one passionate about making quality art materials. These are all manufactured in the UK. And where have I put the tin? So they do quite a range of art materials. I think they do, I've written it in my notes. They do watercolour, gouache, acrylic, drawing inks, dry pigments, crystalline watercolours. So that's, I have some of that. Oh no, that's sticky. Something sticky's gone on that. I don't like sticky things. So these crystalline, this is pigment crystals that if you drop them onto a wet page or you drop them on the page and spray water on them, they'll sort of bloom out, and you can mix them together to make the solid colour, or you can leave them granulated out and not mixed, and they're very pretty. I'll show you that in a moment because it's slightly off topic. They make the usual matte watercolours. Which ones are these ones? Let's test a red again, since we've been playing with red. They make granulating watercolours. I've got a feeling they might make some iridescent shimmery watercolours, but I'm not sure. I'll have to check. Lots of people do, but we'll come on to the shimmery stuff in a bit, because I have quite a lot. I am a little magpie for glittery things. Wet that down. What colour was that? Did I write on that what colour it was? This is Pyrrole Red. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And what blue did we get from them? We've got a French ultramarine, let's try that. So this is the bog standard French ultramarine versus the ultramarine deep from Wallace Seymour. So it will be a slightly different colour. It should be a little bit warmer. It makes really nice purples and really nice skies. There's a reason that ultramarine is considered a standard colour in so many palettes, because it's so useful. And you can see that granulating straight away. That is granulated so much more than the Wallace Seymour one. See, that one looks really smooth, and that one is immediately granulating out. If you like granulation, that's great. If you don't like granulation, you know, it's one to avoid, but I really love it. Let's do a separate little mix on the page to see what happens with that red. A bit of red. What's going to happen? It looks a bit brown and muddy to start with. If we wash it out, it's more of a maroon. Would be brilliant for skin tones and animals, trees, loads of stuff. Let's have a look at a granulating one. What have we got? Nebula and jade green. Let's just wet them up a little bit. Give them a chance to get activated. I'm going to make a wet puddle. Look at that. If that doesn't suggest moss on trees and English hedgerows, I don't know what does. This rough paper is also great for using the paper texture to suggest detail. So if you can see the dry brush skipping across the texture, that's brilliant if you're using blues and suggesting water or texture on rocks and things. I've gone a bit mad with this jade green. I've not left room for the other colour. Let's have a look at Nebula. I think this is a purpley colour, but I can't remember. I'll pop it down there. Granulating paints do need room and water to do what they do best, so don't expect stunning results if you're going to paint it on very thickly in a small space, quite dry, isn't it? It's not gonna, the magic won't happen if you don't give it water to play with and texture to play with. That's very nice. What's the other one that we've got? can find a smidgen of space. We've got Moonlight. Feed it a drop of water. Ooh, that's pretty. That's very pretty. If we go back to that previous one. Some granulating paints are made with more than one pigment, and so as they settle out, you will see more than one colour in the mix. And some are made with just one pigment, so you won't see that. We'll come to some of that in a minute. That needs to dry before I can turn the page. I may run out of paper. I won't run out of paper, that is a lie. I have so much paper I could start my own art company at this point. Next, the next company who I have bought a selection of paints from is Honeybee Pigments. They sell on Etsy. I don't know if they have their own off Etsy website, but they are also on Facebook. And they make fantastic shimmering paints and also really lovely, really creamy. Now these are an example. It's a bit hard to see now because I've squirted them with water, but these have got a lot of binder in. They've got honey in them as well, and they are not going to dry and crack, which means they activate very quickly when you get them wet. It does also mean if you drop something in the palette, it will stick to them and make a mess. And when you pick them up, you will make a mess. But that's okay. We don't mind being messy. Let's mix that with... I'm getting really bored of red now. Let's mix that with this blue. I've effectively got a primary plus some others to make a rainbow here. And we're going to get a green eventually. What else have we got? There's absolutely fantastic purple. Oh, so pretty. I use purple a lot in mixes for shadows. Purple makes nice shadows. I rarely ever use black, and that's not really because watercolourists aren't supposed to use black. I will use black. I use black pen a lot, but I find black watercolour just looks very flat and cold, whereas using mixes of blues and purples or dark greens just makes for more interesting shadows, and it's just nicer to look at. What else did we have here? I've turned these around so I can't see the colour names. This is a beautiful indigo. I love that. That is so much more interesting to look at than black. Look at that. As I say, one of the advantages of buying from a small company is you can talk to them. You know, I mean, the big companies will probably talk to you, but then you might get a standard response. You're unlikely to be talking to the person that actually gets messy and makes paint. So I really like being able to speak directly to the person who is making the paint. And if you get friendly with them, you never know what they might be able to do for you. They might be able to curate you a set of paints, or you could even work with them to make your own paint colours if you want to. They might kill me for suggesting that. Ooh, I really love indigo. All of my working palettes have got indigo in them. Let's have a look at that on the handmade cotton paper. I do love this indigo so much. I want to paint blue things. It's lovely the way it moves across the texture of the paper. And let's see how far it'll spread. You can do that same thing in reverse. Instead of touching the brush full of paper to the wet area, you can lay down a thick line of paint. Let's put 2 colours in that one actually. Let's add a bit of that red. And then you can go and add some water to it. I think some clean water. Clean-ish water. Let's bring that water down to the paint and see what happens. My problem with playing with things like this is that I never really know when to stop and just leave it be. Honeybee also make shiny glittery effects paints with mica, and I have quite the stash. You can use these on their own, you can use them to glaze over the top of dry colours, you can use them for highlights. What colour should we go for? I don't know, I have so much choice. It's blowing my little mind just a bit. We're going with blue, let's go with blue. Got a blue theme going on here. And also activate this lighter blue. The shimmery paints with mica in take a little bit longer to wet up and activate because the mica is a little heavier. So you need to give them a minute and just move the paint around a little bit on the surface, and then that has a lot of pigment in there. You do have to experiment a bit and find which maker makes shimmery paints the way you like them. I have had some from other makers where the paint is all mica and no colour pigment, and in some colours that works well and on some papers that works really well, but I find in others it doesn't work so well, and it can leave you with rather lumpy bits of mica and no colour. But it's all down to what you personally prefer. Let's add a bit here. And you might like that. You might want to add shimmer over dry colours that you've already put down. So it might work perfectly for you. I like mine to be really colourful, so that I can contrast or complement what's underneath. I really like Honeybee's paints because they tend to flow very nicely. A lot of mica based paints don't flow very well, I think because the mica is quite heavy, and if you were to put loads of binder in them to keep them wet, then the mica would all sink to the bottom. You'd have to stir the pan every time you used it. Lycomorpha next. I have only ever bought from Lycomorpha once. I've been tempted by their paint for a very long time. It looks absolutely delicious. They sell on Etsy. I think they have their own website as well. And I thought I would treat myself with the excuse of making this video. How handy. So I bought an oddball set, which is these little teeny tiny 8th pans. These ones. A lot of one-person business paint makers will make these little oddball lucky dip sets from things that they're testing out, ideas, little odds and ends of paint that won't quite fill a full pan, end of line, all kinds of things. So you can get some very inspiring and interesting colours, and they might not be repeated, but I find having interesting colours that I wouldn't potentially have picked for myself does inspire me and push me to try new things. These wet up really nice. They are slightly sticky when dry, so they wet very quickly. I have no idea what this blue is, but it looks nice. It looks like an ultramarine blue. Lovely. What else have we got? This pink. I think if I'd made this, I think I would have called it Pepto-Bismol pink. Or Gaviscon pink. You could paint some very nice florals with that. But the thing that Lycomorpha does incredibly well is granulating paints, and a lot of these are duotone paints, so there is 2 or more pigments in here which will all move and separate and do exciting things on the paper. So let's have a look at this one. This is called Lost Thoughts. And it starts out looking quite opaque. But when we add some more water to it and let it move, it's very granulating. Very, very pretty. What else should we go for? Sea Sprite. I could just play with these for hours and not even paint anything. I could just slap them on the paper and watch them do their thing. This one, yeah, Sea Sprite. I can't remember what colours are in here. That's got a brighter blue and a more purplier colour in there. I can't remember what this one's called. This next one. I think it's got some black in it. What else is in there? We're playing with interesting new paints. Even just not painting a picture, just making a mess, I find really helps get you active, get you motivated, get you thinking about what you can create, what the possibilities are. Where sitting at a computer staring at reference images or just thinking about things or staring at a blank page often won't. And I can go down a rabbit hole of looking at reference images for hours on end and never find the exact perfect thing. And I don't think that's particularly good for my little brain weasels at all. I think actively making some marks on a page is much better for me. And letting the colours that these other artists have created inspire me is much, much better. I want to paint a mossy log with that, and I want to paint a sky with that one, with maybe some dead winter trees in it. Let's have a look at what they're like on smooth paper, assuming we can turn this page now. Yeah, I think we can get away with it. what was I going to look at next? The next person, last person on my list before I started to panic about running out of money is Little Rainbow Moon. Hang on a minute. Little Rainbow Moon, who I don't think sells on Etsy. I haven't come across them on Etsy. But they make little curated sets. Brilliant for journaling, all kinds of creative stuff. They do a lot of glittery things. They also do matte colours. And I did ask them to send me a curated palette of what they thought was pretty, nice, interesting. So they did. So I've got colours I may not have chosen, but that helps me avoid getting stuck in a rut. This is a beautiful pink. It's a fuchsia sort of pink. What else do we have here? This might be a purple. Oh, this is a purple. I am partial to a purple. Let's have a look at some of these glittery ones on here. Let's go for another pink. This would be brilliant for glazing. Probably needs a little bit longer to wet up actually. If I'd thought, I would find an example of a large piece where I've used shimmery paints to glaze over the flat colour. I have got photographs of them. I can put them up on Substack, but they don't show up as well in photos. Let's see how that spreads out a bit. I haven't played with these as much as the others because they only arrived the other week. Let's look at this tealy blue. I am a sucker for a tealy blue. I have so many different shades. All the turquoises and teals. Ooh. I'm seeing water and dragonflies here. Yeah. I will put the prices of all of this stuff up somewhere. None of it was crazy money. And I find that it is astonishing that you can buy quality handmade paint for, I think some of these were as little as £4 for a pan, £3.50 for a smaller pan. What did I put? These Rainbow Moon sets of 4 are 20 quid. That's £5 for a pan. Most people that I've bought from do, the small companies, is they will send you dot cards, and I've got a couple of examples. I think these were from Hahnemuhle. So they'll send you little dot cards, which are just little blobs on a card of other colours that you can try out, and they are a generous amount. I have a whole tin. Here, some of which are from Honeybee, some from other companies. They're a great way of sampling out colours. Some of them will actually sell dot card sets if you want to try a curated set before you buy, which is a good idea. And whilst they look like they're a very small amount, actually you can paint quite a lot with just what's on a dot card. So don't discount those. And I think it's lovely being able to try a few more colours before I invest in a larger quantity. So I slightly hoard them a little bit like a paint golem. Like I do with all my art materials. All the colours are in here. I really should have played with this set a little bit more. Ooh, that's pretty. A nice shadowy grey. I'm going to try this green as well. This looks like an earth green and it seems to be wetting up quite quickly. Yeah. One of the downsides of buying from small creators is that obviously they may make a colour for a while and then stop making it, whereas when you're buying from larger companies, those colours will be repeatable. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think seeing new colours and new ideas is more inspiring, and if you need repeatable colours, there's always going to be somebody making them. There are only so many pigments in the world. You're not gonna suffer from lack of them, but I think people creating new stuff is more inspiring than plodding along doing the same thing every day. If you really like a colour someone's made and they're not making it again, ask. They may make you a batch if you're prepared to pay for their time and materials, of course. If it was me, I would, but you just have to ask and build relationships with people. But again, I like that. I think buying from real people you can talk to is something that we are losing, and I think we really should fight to keep the small companies. I think it will be awful if we end up with just anonymous Amazon only purchases and not knowing where things come from and who makes them, and I think if we stand to lose a lot of skills and crafts as well if we're not very careful. What else was I going to play with? Since I've got them out, where did I put the Jackman's pigments? Now, there are other crystalline watercolour pigments around. However, Jackman's are actually watercolour. A lot of the ones that I've seen, for example Brusho, are not actually watercolour pigments, they are dye. And dye is typically not light fast. I'll spray the page. And tap a teeny bit. You can see it goes crazy. But also, we can stir it around with a brush. We can if I work out where I put the brush. Let's use a different one. I can stir it around with a brush, move it about a bit, mix it together, or leave it unmixed. Have a look at the other way around. You don't need very much. It will go. Now, be careful spraying, because if the blast from your spray knocks the pigment off the page, it won't work. It's an interesting way to create fun backgrounds or abstract works. I like these for adding colour to line work that I've already drawn out, and then adding random colour that I can control a little bit if I want, or I can leave it to do its thing. Either way, watercolour really is about learning to let it do its thing and let go of control, which I really struggle with. If we mix it all together, that is a beautiful turquoise. Very pretty, and these are proper watercolour and light fast. but being watercolour, these will re-wet. So I've got a feeling that the Brusho, being dye ink based, once it's dry it is dry. I don't know, I would have to check that. So don't get stuck just buying paint from the big name companies. Get out there and see what's around, see who's making interesting things, and see how they can inspire you to produce different art, interesting art, or even just have fun. You don't have to show anybody. As if you enjoy the process, that'll do. And for me, a lot of art is about enjoying the process, and I've got pieces I've created that I have no intention of selling because I like them, but the liking them is tied in with the process of making them, more so possibly than the finished image sometimes. So make art for yourself, and if other people like it, great. If they don't, stuff them. Calls to action: like, comment, subscribe.